Give everybody a moment to get in. It's great to see so many faces that I know and love. It's great to see new faces too. Before we get started, I just want to say as we go in, I'm recovering from a lot of ickiness this week, getting over strep throat as well as a respiratory thing. So I'm going to do my best not to sneeze in your ears, but I may have to put myself on mute every now and again. Give everyone another moment. Okay. Let's get started. And let's actually come together by getting grounded. So, if it's comfortable for you, I invite you to close your eyes. And if not, just keep your eyes open, but go inward. Taking a moment now to settle in. To remember your body. And to find your breath. No need to change your breath or manipulate it. Simply find it and connect with your body through the breath. Connect with this moment through the breath. Connect with all of the wisdom that you hold inside of yourself. Noticing how you feel today. Just really giving yourself some moments to arrive. And then placing a hand on your heart. Connect with your heart. Connect with your love. Connect with your passion. Connect with all that you hold in your heart. Honoring your heart for all it is, all it holds, all it's been through. And then together we'll all take a nice deep breath in and exhale everything out. And then allow your eyes to slowly open, bringing yourself fully present to our time together today. So welcome. Welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here. It's so great to see you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Joanna Lindenbaum. I'm the founder of the Applied Depth Institute, and I'm the creator of the Sacred Depths Transformational Practitioner Certification. And I am just so happy that you're here. For those of you that who do know me, then you already know that my deep, deep mission and passion, and really one of my obsessions in life, is to raise the bar of the coaching and transformational and wellness industries. Industries that I love so much and have received so much from. In all of our programming at Applied Depth Institute, our purpose is to really support practitioners to be amazing at what they do and to master world-class transformational techniques so that your clients are beyond satisfied with the work that you do together and so that you're able to deeply impact each and every person that you work with. One of the many reasons why I've dedicated my career to supporting and training transformational practitioners is because not only is it a matter of pride and a matter of integrity to be exceptional at what you do and to be able to support your clients through their toughest obstacles, but also because when you do incredible work with your clients and with your students, well, that's the most powerful business and marketing strategy that you can have, hands down. Stellar client work leads to what I call the 3 R's of sustainable business: renewals, referrals, and reputation, which of course happens when you've got very happy, very satisfied clients who sign with you over and over again and tell their friends and their communities about you. Renewals, referrals, and reputations are not only the most powerful marketing, but it's also the cheapest marketing. So even in my business, where now I do use ads, marketing strategies like ads and things like that, the majority of my business still, after all of these years, comes from returning clients and referrals and reputation, even though I serve hundreds of people every year. So, all of that being said, I'm just thrilled for us to come together today and really get our feet wet with this very powerful and transformational tool for navigating resistance when it comes up for our clients and also for ourselves, because we have resistance too. Knowing how to handle resistance can sometimes be make or break in your success with a client. Whether it's one-on-one or in a group, it's not a matter of if resistance shows up in your coaching sessions or your groups, but it's a matter of when. So, how do you know that resistance is coming up for a client? I'm going to share some of the, telltale signs. And as I go through each of these possibilities for how resistance can show up, just make note if this is showing up either for clients that you're working with or for yourself. So resistance can show up as clients not wanting to do the work, or clients not being able to make forward movement. They're just not taking the action steps that they've said they want to take. It can show up as clients getting angry or upset, maybe at you even as the practitioner, because they're not making headway. It can show up as clients becoming overly needy as they're going towards the things that they really want. They really need a ton of hand holding, etc. More so than what feels appropriate. Sometimes resistance can show up in your work if you're leading a group and one participant takes the group hostage. Resistance can also show up with clients either showing up late or not showing up for sessions at all or canceling last minute. Resistance can look like someone having a bad attitude, not doing their homework, getting stuck in confusion. So it seemed like they were clear on action steps at the end of a session or what they wanted to do or how they were going to move forward, and then they just get confused. Sometimes resistance can look like just getting overwhelmed all the time and not being able to move forward or taking action because of overwhelm. Sometimes resistance can show up as I don't know why, but I'm not able to take the actions that we set. I keep on thinking I'm going to, and then I didn't. Or it can show up as I just can't stop procrastinating. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just keep on procrastinating. Sometimes resistance can show up as oh, this is too hard. I can't figure it out. I don't know what to do, right? And getting stuck in that. Um, Sometimes resistance can show up as self-sabotage, right? I knew exactly what to do. I was so clear, but then somehow I messed it up anyway. Sometimes client resistance can show up with them getting upset with you that you're not doing enough, you're not showing up enough, etc. So, without the ability to really masterfully move your clients through resistance, it's easy to end up, for you as a practitioner, to end up feeling drained, frustrated, questioning your confidence and your abilities, or maybe just thinking too much about your client's situation. When you do know how to work with resistance, in a way, you kind of become like a rock star. It's funny to say, but it's true. When you can work with resistance, clients move forward with more clarity, with more motivation, with more inspiration, and way less self sabotage. So, all of this kind of begs for the question of what causes resistance? Well, for those of you that have been working with me for a while, you probably already know this answer. Resistance is a symptom of fear. Resistance is a symptom of fear, especially fear that hasn't been addressed or worked through. So, fear is a natural and normal part of growth, of achieving goals, etc. For as much as our clients want to grow, for as much as they want to achieve their goals, oftentimes hand in hand with that is some fear about achieving the goals or the process of achieving the goals or what's going to happen once they do achieve the goals, or what it might mean about them if they can't or don't achieve the goals, right? So fear really is part and parcel of that normal growth process. And then what happens is sometimes when we go into fear, and there's a lot of it, we end up moving into resistance. Instead of being able to look at and address and what we call in Sacred Depths, befriend the fear itself, the resistance shows up and it becomes a distraction. The resistance is almost like your ego's very smart and tricky way of distracting you from actually looking at and working with the fear. So then you go into, oh, well, this is just too hard, or I just can't, excuse me, or it's just too confusing, or I ended up procrastinating, or right, all of those things. So you can almost think of it as I like to think of it as there's fear, um, which is in the core, right? And then if the fear is too big or isn't being addressed, the resistance actions or reactions really get wrapped over the fear. And so we get distracted from actually looking at, maybe there's a fear of not belonging or a fear of not good enough or a fear of surpassing loved ones, right? Whatever it is, we get distracted from actually looking at that. And instead, we end up focusing on the this is too hard, or I'm procrastinating, or, why aren't we moving more quickly? Or, whatever it is, all of those resistance reactions. When you know how to support your clients to navigate through resistance, then you can get rid of that outer layer of distraction and work on the fear itself, which is where such deep gold and transformation lies. Now, most practitioners don't really know how to support their clients through resistance. They don't even really understand resistance. By the time that we're complete today, my intention is that not only will you understand many of the underpinnings of resistance and the psychic underpinnings of resistance, but you'll also have a 6-step method for working with it for yourself, for your clients, that you can adapt based on many different client situations. So I'm really excited for all of this. Let's jump in. And let me just tell you a little bit about how we'll work today. So we're gonna be going for 3 hours. We'll take a short break for the bathroom at some point, I promise. So we're gonna go until 2 p.m. Eastern. We've got a lot to cover. We're gonna really get our feet wet with learning how to navigate resistance. We're going to learn the overarching 6 steps of the navigating resistance process. And you'll see the 6-step process activates what I call the 4 levels of learning and processing. So it's not just a cognitive process, that's one level of learning and processing, but it is a process that activates the heart level, that activates the soul level, and that activates the body, the somatic level as well. So we're going to get through all of that. I'm going to teach you that 6-step process. Now, and this is important, for the 6-step process, in order to really move your clients through it, your coaching and transformational skills need to be in tip-top shape. So skills like how to create safe and vulnerable containers, how to listen deeply, how to create awareness even in edgy situations, how to craft and ask breakthrough questions, how to move clients through somatic processes, and others. So obviously, I'm not going to teach all the details of those skills today. It would take much, much more than a 3-hour workshop for all of that. We do that in Sacred Depths, but today I'll teach you the overarching 6-step process for navigating resistance. I am going to be talking a lot. Those of you that know me know that I do have a lot to say, but at the same time, I want to really hear your voice. We're going to have plenty of time for sharing, for questions, all of that. I really value your voices and what you bring to the table as well. So it's going to be interactive. I'm going to front load with content, but then we're going to move through a bunch of experiential exercises. And my intention is that through those exercises, you're going to receive not just techniques for your clients, but this is also for you to be able to work through some of your resistance as well. Today's session is just a small sliver of what we learn in Sacred Depths. And today is also a great model for the type of work that we do there. Towards the end of our time together today, I'll take just a couple minutes to share more about Sacred Depths for those of you who are interested in learning more. So, to jump in, let's set intentions and let me ask you some questions just to kind of get our feet wet here. How does resistance show up for your clients if you're working with clients or even people that you know in your personal life? So, how does resistance show up for your clients? And how has that impacted your work together? I'll let you take a moment to jot down some notes, and I'd love to also hear in the chat some examples. How does resistance show up for your clients? And how has that impacted the work? Janet's saying anger. Yeah, that's a biggie. We're gonna look at that for sure in a little bit. What else? How does resistance show up for your clients? Avoidance, Christina's saying. Yep, another biggie. Self-sabotage. Yes. Overwhelm, blame of others. Yes, overthinking. I'm glad you're bringing that one in, Linda. We're gonna look at that one too. As all of these we're gonna touch. Alta Gracia is also saying avoidance. Yeah, they don't do any of the work or respond. Not following through. Perfectionism. Yeah, another biggie. Not doing the steps or actions that they outlined in previous sessions. Yes. Confusion, freezing. Yes. Now, sometimes, and just make a small note of but it's important. Sometimes the freezing is related to resistance. Sometimes the freezing is related to trauma. It's so important for us to be trauma informed and also to know our scopes. So, freezing can fall into one of those two categories depending on what's going on for a client. Karen saying they're confused right after they make a breakthrough. Yes, that's classic. Can be classic resistance. Helen saying getting sick. Yes, we're gonna look at that one too. That can come up for sure. Confusion and frustration. Yes, yes. Talking in circles. Yeah, okay, good. Next question. How does resistance show up in your own life and business? And take a moment and journal on this one. How does resistance show up for you in your own life and business? And how has that impacted your movement towards reaching your goals? I'll put this in the chat. How does resistance show up in your own life and business? And then how has that impacted you and your goals? And after you do some journaling on that, please share in the chat. Probably a lot of similar things to your clients. So, how does resistance show up for you? Janet saying procrastination, putting everyone else's needs first. Yeah. Swati saying confusion about my message. Helen saying giving up, feeling resigned. Yeah, procrastination, busy work. Avoidance, thinking things need to be perfect. Perfectionism is a big, big thing that can come up. In Sacred Depths, we do a full module just on myth of perfection because it's such a biggie. Yeah, anger at myself for not believing in myself. Yeah, ideas overwhelm. Needing to know before acting. Linda saying overscheduling. That can be a big resistance and self-sabotage thing. Feeling fatigued, Maria's saying. Yeah. Gathering more info, shutting down. Yeah, sleeping in, overeating. Elisa saying, what about self-doubt? Self-doubt can be resistance, and it can also be a core fear. You can work with it in both the ways. Like, you can work with self-doubt in the ways that the process that I'll be teaching today. And then you can also work it in the befriend your fear process that I teach as well. I won't be teaching that one today. Yeah, getting tired when it's time to do the project. Yes. Okay, so Janice, Karen say, who was it that said that? Watching Ted Lasso instead of working on my projects. It is a good show. Okay, so taking all of this into consideration, how this impacts your clients, how this impacts you, what would you like to receive from our time together today? And get clear for yourself. What would you like to receive today? Helen's saying, knowing that I'm not the only one experiencing this. Yeah, as we'll see, normalization is actually one of the important steps of navigating resistance. You're not the only one. In fact, it's out of the norm to not experience. New set of skills. Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Yeah, and Mindy's saying to be able to better spot it. We're going to look at that too. Reassurance. Yes. Okay, last question for now. I want to invite you to set an inner intention for yourself for our time together today. So when I say inner intention, what I really mean is, how are you going to show up? Maybe with curiosity or self-compassion. Maybe your intention is, that one of your ways of resistance is you end up checking out halfway through, right? Resistance can show up even in a workshop about resistance. So maybe your intention is to really continue to bring yourself present and really show up for yourself. What's your inner intention for our time together today? And whatever that inner intention is, take a moment and really set it for yourself. So, yes, it's good to identify it, to write it down. That activates the cognitive, but activate the heart a little, or the body level. Maybe put a hand on your heart and, just make yourself that sacred promise or breathe it in. Really set that intention for yourself. Okay. All right. So let's step into the 6-step process. As we go through it, you'll also learn a lot more about the nature of resistance. We're going to go step by step through the process today. It's going to take some time. Once you master it, it may take as little as 5 or 10 minutes in a client session, or it may take longer if you want to do it in a longer form way. The steps can expand and contract depending on the client's needs and what's going on. The first couple steps are kind of self-explanatory. When we get to step 3, that's when we'll really be going deeper into the experiential work. Okay, so before even step 1, there's a step 0. This is before you even utter a word to a client that is in resistance. And the step 0 is master your energetics. I'll put that in the chat. Master your energetics. So you can't do any of the rest of the steps in this process of navigating client resistance if you haven't mastered your energetics. This is foundational. This comes before everything. So, what does that mean to master your energetics? Well, number one, you want to be able to set a really strong container in your client work, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's groups. You want a really strong and solid and safe container. Without a strong container, there's not enough trust or vulnerability or willingness on the part of the client. So how do you set a strong container? Well, there's a lot to it. I won't get into all of the pieces today, but one of the most important pieces that I want to mention right now, actually two. So the first is level the playing field. We work on this a lot in Sacred Depths. Level the playing field is essential to creating a strong container. Leveling the playing field means that as the practitioner, you trust your client and you trust yourself. You trust your client and you trust that your client is good enough. You trust that you are good enough. You trust that your client is whole and complete exactly as they are. They don't need fixing. They don't need healing from you, right? You trust that they're whole and complete exactly as they are. And you trust that you're whole and complete exactly as you are. This is so important, right? I know it's kind of obvious, but just to say, energy follows energy. That's something that Sacred Depthers hear a lot from me. Energy follows energy. When you trust that your client is whole and complete, that they're okay, that they're good enough, that they're trustworthy, they're going to believe that more. When you also trust that you're whole and complete, that you are good enough, that you are worthy, energy follows energy, your client is going to feel that more, right? And trust you. When this is what helps create mutual respect, mutual trust, mutual curiosity, which is so, so, so important to be able to do this deep work and this edgy work of supporting clients through their resistance. The other piece for right now that I want to mention in this step of mastering your energetics, and this is a really important one too, it comes from really understanding the nature of resistance. As a practitioner, it is vital that you know that when a client is in resistance, when they're not able to move forward, when they're showing up in anger, when they're showing up as needy, any of the things, it's so important for you to know that when your client shows up in resistance, it doesn't mean that anything has gone wrong. It doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with your client. And it doesn't mean that you have done anything wrong. Understanding, again, like we looked at earlier, that resistance is a symptom of fear. And fear is simply part of the natural growth process. As a practitioner, when you understand that, then you come to your client containers fully embracing this truth. And then you don't have fear or funky energy or your own triggers come up when a client shows up in resistance. Or you don't inadvertently make them feel like they're doing something wrong, like there's something wrong with them, right? This is so, so, so vital. So there's a lot of work to be done to get to this place. We're not going to do the work now. It takes time. But just to kind of like toe dip for a moment, let me ask you a couple questions about this. And just be honest, no judgment of yourself at all, just for your awareness. Do you tend to judge your clients or yourself when a client goes into resistance? Right? And by the way, so normal, and that's why I'm addressing this, right? That's why the energetics are so important. Do you get scared or put off or feel like you're not doing a good enough job when you're confronted with a client's resistance? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads. Yeah, and in the chat too. Right? So, first of all, know you're not alone. Know that this is normal. But again, I want to remind you resistance is normal. Even the most masterful of practitioners encounter client resistance. It doesn't mean that anything has gone wrong. And in fact, it might mean that a lot has gone very well because it means that your client is in a growth process. Now, you want to know how to work with it, right? That's important. But it doesn't mean anything has gone wrong. So probably you've already answered this next question for yourself, but just in case you haven't, what are the fears that come up for you when a client goes into resistance? What are some of the fears that come up for you? I'm not good enough. Yeah, it's a biggie. I feel like I should have better prepared them. Yeah, self-doubt. I'm overcharging. Yeah, we go to all the places, right? I did something wrong. I won't be able to get them to where they want to be. I have to now scramble for solutions. By the way, that's the last thing that you want to do when a client, I know it's so easy and normal to go there when a client is in resistance, is like, as the practitioner, like, okay, wait, what's the solution? How do I help them? What do we need to do right? But this is why I'm talking about this step of mastering your energetics. Energy follows energy. If we scramble, if we feel like we have to scramble to find a solution, the client is going to feel scrambled in a way too, or like there's something wrong, or this isn't okay. Okay, so again, I cannot emphasize enough how important the energetics are. Huge, 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 huge. In Sacred Depths, we just keep on coming back to energetics with every technique that we learn because it's at the heart of everything. Okay, so from there, then let's move on to step one. So the first thing that you want to do when you see that a client is encountering resistance is you want to create awareness that it's so obvious and simple, but still, you want to create awareness that the resistance is showing up, and you want to create awareness around how the resistance is showing up. Let me pop that in the chat. So you want to create awareness that the resistance is showing up, and you want to create awareness around how it's showing up. So the thing that is so sly and like smarty pants about resistance is that it's usually in if you're experiencing it, or your client's blind spot. It's usually in the blind spot. They don't really realize that they're in resistance. They just think that it's too hard, or they don't have enough time, or they just can't help themselves, right? Whatever the thing is. So the very first thing that you want to do. Yeah, and Amy's saying in the chat, and it often happens suddenly without warning, too. Yeah, 100%. So, the very first thing that you want to do is create awareness. And you want to do this in a very loving way. In a very loving way. Again, energy follows energy. So, lovingly create awareness about the resistance so that your client can see what they're reacting to isn't the task or the action step itself, but instead that it's the fear that gets activated. So you want to create awareness, support your clients to see how the resistance is showing up, how it's impacting them, and also to start to see what some of their patterning is around the resistance. In other words, you want to bring it out of the blind spot and into the light so that your client can actually see it instead of randomly being in resistance and being frustrated about it and not knowing why. Now, I always say, always coach the what based on the who. Always coach the what based on the who. What that means essentially is that every client situation is gonna be a little bit different because each client is different. Even each client is different on one day than another day, right? And so you're not gonna create awareness in the same way with each client or in each client situation. It's gonna depend so much on how the resistance is presenting itself, what kind of mood the client is in that day, what are some of the other context pieces, etc., right? So it'll vary day by, situation by situation, but essentially you want to share, and sometimes it can take a little courage, but you want to, for example, this is one way, this is just one example. You want to share, as an example, I notice that the last 3 sessions, you've walked out with a really clear plan. And then when you've gone to take the action steps, you've gotten really confused. It's like you went from being completely clear to all of a sudden being stuck in confusion. I may not be right about this, but I'm starting to wonder if this is a little bit of a pattern and there's something more going on here, not just that we need to re-clarify the action steps. How does that land for you? Right? So that's one example of naming it lovingly and creating awareness. There are lots of different techniques to use for creating awareness. In Sacred Depths, we actually cover 6 different techniques. We learn about sharing hard truths, reflecting, honoring what is, facting, sharing potent anecdotes. Any of those strategies can be used depending on what, in this step 1, depending on what is presenting itself. Now, I'm not gonna teach, the skills and the techniques of creating awareness today because, again, as I said earlier, it takes a lot of time. But I do wanna mention one very important piece about creating awareness. A lot of times, practitioners can fall into the trap of, when they're creating awareness, of bypassing their clients, of disempowering their clients, or of putting them further into their resistance. If you don't have the skills and the techniques to create awareness, especially when it's a hard truth, in a way that supports a client to have their full agency, in a way that where you're not checking your own filters, you're going to end up bypassing, you're going to end up disempowering. So you want to really know how, not just what is the awareness that you want to create, but what are the words that you're going to use with it? How are you going to deliver it? Right? And even just one small little example of this, and the example that I gave a minute ago with the procrastination, if you noticed, I didn't create the awareness as here I am the guru speaking the truth, right? I allowed for the client's agency with every sentence that I shared. I allowed for the possibility that I might not be right. And I asked the client if it resonated, how it landed for them. Those are important pieces to think about and consider. As a side note, and this is related, this is part of being trauma informed. A lot to say on being trauma informed. Just the one thing right now is that, trauma exists. A lot of people have experienced trauma. And if you have a client who consistently was told who they are, without giving them any agency, you don't want to recreate that when you're with your clients. Okay, so step one, create awareness that the resistance is showing up and how it's showing up. Now, step two is kind of goes along. You can do this sometimes along with step one. Sometimes they can go just together. Step two is love the resistance and also love your client and normalize the resistance. So this is a little bit of an energetics piece, right? When you are creating awareness, and through this entire 6-step process, you want to love your client. You even want to love on their resistance, right? We have a tendency to hate the resistance or feel like our client's resistance is our enemy, is trying to get, right? Like or it's annoying or whatever it is. No, we want to love on it, right? And we also want to normalize. Now, this is really important. Sometimes when we create awareness around resistance, the first thing that can come up for a client is they feel like, oh my God, there's something so wrong with me because I'm in this resistance, right? They feel like a weirdo. Shame may come up, like, oh, like what's wrong with me, right? So this is why we want to normalize resistance when we're creating the awareness, because humans, for better or worse, have the tendency to make themselves wrong and to judge themselves and to beat up on themselves. So as you create awareness, or right after you create the awareness, you might want to say something like, first of all, share your own experience of procrastinating or getting confused or, whatever it is, overscheduling, right? So that's one way of normalizing, saying like, and I totally get it. I have so been there, and sometimes I still go there, right? Or to say, and it's totally normal. I see this happen all the time with my clients. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to achieve your goals. It just means that we've got to do some work on this, right? So we want to normalize the experience. All right, I've been talking a lot. We're going to start getting, like, really going deep in a moment. We're going to start to get into the resistance archetypes. Before we do, let me just pause and see, are there any questions so far? Or I'd also just love to hear what's coming together for you so far? What are you seeing? What's feeling really important here? And please feel free to raise your hand. What are you seeing so far? What's coming together? What feels important? Amy in the chat is saying normalize and empower rather than isolate and exaggerate power. So beautifully said. I love that. Yes. Jennifer saying being trauma informed. Yes, everything that we do, we want to be trauma informed. Now, being trauma informed doesn't mean that we work with trauma. That may not be in your scope, right? But being trauma informed means that you're aware that it's out there, that it could be present for your client, and that you have techniques to not re-trigger or send your client deeper into the trauma. Christina saying co-regulation is coming to mind. Yeah, I love that. Beautiful. Ray is seeing how this is related also to personal relationships. Yes, we're going to get into that too, Ray, a little bit. Maria's feeling normalized. I'm so happy. Jackie saying changing the relationship with when, how, and why the resistance shows up. Yes. Helen's asking what co-regulation means. Helen, it means that you as the practitioner is regulated and you're holding the space for the client to be regulated as well. So it is related to energy follows energy. The more nervous we are as practitioners and get dysregulated, the more likely our clients are to get dysregulated as well. But when we're regulated, our clients get more regulated, and it's like an infinity back and forth between us. Elisa, now I'm glad you're mentioning this, Elisa. One time, one of my teachers said that mentioning resistance might get the person stuck in resistance. So it's good to hear a different perspective. That happens, Elisa, if we create awareness in ways that are either not trauma informed or disempowering or bypass our clients. That's why the creating awareness skills in Sacred Depths, it takes us 3 sessions to learn all of the creating awareness skills because they're so important. And that's what makes the difference. Okay, great. Let's keep on going. And the next share I ask for, I really want someone to raise their hand so you don't just hear my voice. I want to hear other voices. But let's continue on for now. So step 3 is identify and unpack the resistance archetype. Identify and unpack the resistance archetype. Okay, here's where things start to get really juicy. So in the decades excuse me, that I've been working with clients and working with myself, I have really found that being able to look at resistance through the lens of archetypes, and I call them resistance archetypes, is just endlessly helpful. And I'm going to share with you resistance archetypes that I developed over many years of working with clients and really tracking them closely and supporting them to move forward. But before we get to the actual archetypes, let's take a moment and look at what is an archetype. It's a term that is thrown around a lot in the transformational industry. I'm going to use it in a very particular way today. And in a Jungian way, for those of you that are Jungians. An archetype is an energy that your client takes on. An archetype is an energy that your client takes on. It's a way of acting, being, or experiencing a certain situation. So when I say it's an energy that your client takes on, as you'll see, we're going to look at the victim, the judge, the know-it-all. it's not that your client is any of those things. But when they go into fear, their MO, like the way that they kind of distract themselves from like feeling the fear, right? Which we like tend to want to distract ourselves from, is they step into the energy of the victim, or they step into the energy of the judge, or they step into the energy of the know-it-all. You can also think of archetypal energy almost like a mask that your client inadvertently puts on as a response to fear or a trigger. It's like a protective mask. Helen's asking if this would be similar to archetypes as Enneagram. I don't know Enneagram well enough to answer that, Helen. What I will say is this: a lot of times in the transformational industry, an archetype is kind of like, this is the, like, it's just kind of named as this is the profile. And that can have some nice purpose to it. But what we're talking about here, and maybe you all know this for yourself, and as we get deeper into this, I think this will make even more sense. It's like when you get triggered, it's like you step into this vortex of energy of the victim or the judge or whatever it is, and you don't even realize it, but now it's harnessing you instead of you having control over the situation. You end up doing things that you're like, why am I saying that? Or why am I reacting? That's not me, right? So these archetypes are not who our clients are or who we are when we go into it. It's just that this is the MO or the response to fear or the mask that is put on in response to fear or a trigger. Like I said earlier, in most cases, we're not aware of it when it happens. Even if we've done the work sometimes, like my victim is strong, right? Sometimes if my victim gets triggered, it's like all my work that I do with clients and everything that I know about this temporarily disappears. And I believe with every cell of my being that I am being victimized in the situation, right? Until I snap out of it. So it's sometimes, even when we're aware of it, we're not aware of it. Okay, so you can think about it this way. Do you have a certain way of being or acting or reacting to stressful situations or potential growth situations where it almost feels like you're taking on a less than savory persona? And this can be with work, it can be with romantic partners, it can be with friends, it might show up with clients, right? So here's an example from my own life. My husband bears the brunt of this, sadly. But when things get stressful in our personal life, or when there's a lot going on, or if there's something tough, I have 2 daughters, something tough with the kids, I go straight into being a victim. I feel so disempowered. I feel like it's the end of the world. Like we are helpless and it's never going to change, etc., 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 right? And even as I'm saying this, there's a part of me that's even aware, like, who is this person saying these negative things? I'm not generally a negative, well, let's be honest, I am a negative person, but when I'm at my best, I'm not a negative person, right? Like, who is this, right? So that's one of my responses or masks that I put on, right? So for you, how do you respond when you're not in your highest self? When you're triggered or scared or go into your defenses? Helen's saying the judge. Yep. Overwhelm. Yes. Everyone is against me. Yes. Everyone. Yes, anger. Linda's saying, I love me some know-it-all. Yep. The judge, the persecutor. Yep. Yeah. Flakiness, confusion, judge and the victim, avenging angel. Ooh, yeah. Catastrophizing. Yes, I know catastrophizing well. Why is this happening to me? Yeah, okay. So can we all agree that um this is probably didn't just happen once, right? This is a little bit of a pattern. Okay. Sometimes we can also go into our resistance archetypes when we feel confronted. When we feel confronted, right? So I want to mention that again back to how we as practitioners create awareness makes all the difference, or else we can push our resistant clients deeper into their resistance. Okay, so we've already started to name the archetypes. There are many. Um, excuse me. I'm going to name right now some of the most common ones that I have seen. But there are others as well. I'm going to just briefly describe each one. Um, in Sacred Depths, we go kind of into the deep profile of each and the specific question sequences for each. We're not going to do that here, but I just want to give you an understanding, and then we'll do some deep work with these guys. So, my favorite, the victim. The victim can sound like we've already got some in the chat, right? Why is this happening to me? There was another one in there that was so everyone is against me. I went on vacation and then my friend visited and they took all my time and then that's why I couldn't get anything done. The first 3 people I invited to my new program said no, so I'm never gonna be able to fill that program. I'm just not the kind of person that can do that. No one in my family has ever been able to do that. We're just not the kind of people that can do that. I never have enough time. Um, it doesn't matter what I do, I just don't know the right people, and that's why I can't get into the places that I want to get into. I'm putting this next one under the victim. It may not necessarily fall under the victim, just for ease sake right now. Sometimes, and it was mentioned in the chat, physical conditions, right? Like I have such a bad migraine. I can't, right? Now, an important point about when clients have physical symptoms, be careful in naming this as resistance. Medical issues are serious, right? And often not related to resistance. We do not want to bypass our clients. This requires deep listening skills, right? Now, if a client says, every time I go to take action on something, I have a migraine, I wonder what's up there, then you've got your green light on that, right? Or for those of you that have been through Sacred Depths, you can bring it up on your own if if you use the reflecting hard truths um, strategies that we looked at where the client has full agency, you're willing to be wrong, it's just an exploration, right? Then you can, but you do want to be careful about that and a little tender around that. Okay, so for the victim, essentially, everyone and everything is against them. They can never move forward because there's always something that is out of their control that's messing them up or standing in their way. They're powerless to the circumstances of life. They blame anything outside of themselves for what they're not doing or achieving. And because of the blaming of things outside of themselves, they kind of always have an excuse for not achieving or for not taking responsibility to their actions. Now, again, just also want to mention, check your privilege when it comes to the victim. We can end up bypassing clients who don't have the same privilege that we do and see it as, oh, they're just being a victim, right? So we want to always use all of our skills with this, right? We want to really honor our clients. So to identify the victim, we want to listen for excessive excuses, excessive blaming of others, without mention of next steps or problem solving. We want to listen for maybe a sense of powerlessness or a sense of resignation that the situation is never going to change for them. We want to listen for catastrophic negativity. We want to listen to a commitment to helplessness or disempowerment. The judge. So the judge I have found to be very related to the victim. There can be a crossover between the victim and the judge, but there are also differences between the two. The judge is always judging either themselves, such as I suck, I just can't, I'm not flexible enough, I'm not smart enough, etc., etc., etc. Or if they're not judging themselves, they're judging other people. Other people are always doing something wrong. I'm not going to put a bid on that house that I really want to buy because that realtor is just slimy, so I'm just going to walk away from it. Or I'm not going to do videos. This is me. I'm not going to do videos for my business because it's just too salesy and I'm not salesy. So I'm not going to do videos, right? It's avoiding the thing that you want to do by judging it. Or even trickier, sometimes the judge can judge you, the practitioner. Well, I just couldn't do it because you didn't explain it well enough. Or you're just wrong in that suggestion. Like maybe that's okay for you to do something like that, but that doesn't work for me, right? Okay. We always want to use our listening skills and we don't want to bypass, et cetera, et cetera. The way you can tell the difference, by the way, between, okay, this just isn't aligned for the client, the suggestion that you made, versus it's the judge, it's a resistance archetype. It's about the energy. Remember, archetypes are energies, right? So if you make a suggestion to a client and they're like, that doesn't, that doesn't feel right, because this, that, or the other thing, that's a very different energy than like, you're wrong. I would never, right? Like that kind of at you, judging you energy. That's the difference there. Now, this being said, as a practitioner, if a client is judging on you, the only way that you're going to be able to know the difference between, oh, this is resistance coming up versus, oh, like this is really not aligned for the client, is if your level, excuse me, is if your level field, if your playing field is level. If you've already come to the session of I'm not good enough, I'm wrong, I never say the right things, I'm not going to be able to help my client, then you may not be able to detect the judge. You're just going to think, oh yeah, I just suck right now, right? So you want to watch for that, always work on your energetics. So to hear the judge. You want to listen for excessive criticism of you, of themselves, of others, or of the way the world works. You want to listen for an energy of bitterness or passive aggressiveness. You want to listen for maybe the client is looking for a way out of goals by making judgments. And this was mentioned in the chat before, sometimes a demand for perfectionism in themselves or others. Okay. I'm going to put the confused one. So I'm going to put 3 archetypes into one. They each have their own flavor, but we'll talk about them together. The confused one, the flake, and the disconnected one. They all kind of have a similar flavor. So the confused one we've spoken about, they're super smart people. They get it, they understand, but somehow they end up like if it's something that is scary for them, they get confused, right? They get overwhelmed and confused. We could also say the overwhelmed one might fall here too, right? So the confused, like I said, they're normally smart, and but somehow it's like they just don't get it, or they're just not organized. Um, their fear of moving forward gets in the way of retaining the information that they need in order to move forward. The flake is a variation on that. The fear can show up simply by not showing. They just don't show up. They just don't do it, or they don't show up for the session, or whatever it is. Becoming MIA for weeks, you don't hear from them. That can be the flake. By the way, just to say, like with the flake, people not showing up for sessions, you not hearing from them, etc., the better you're able to set a tight and nurturing container from the get-go in your work, the less likely the flake will show up in that way. The needy one. This is the person who is normally completely, well, I shouldn't say nobody's completely self-sufficient, but someone who's normally pretty self-sufficient. But when they go into fear, they feel like they can't do anything on their own, and they constantly need you. They constantly are asking for more feedback, for more time from you. They need you to, as the practitioner, to hold their hand for every little thing. I've had 1 or 2 of those for sure. Elisa's asking in the chat, do you mean when I was talking about the container, Elisa? Yeah, so what I was saying is this is separate from, this is related to resistance. And again, we go deeply into this in Sacred Depths. I just want to quick mention it now. You want to set a strong container at the beginning of your work with a client. There's certain things that, you want to have shared agreements, for example. There's many different things on the list, but you want a really tight container that will help avoid clients not showing up, missing sessions, falling, off the face of the earth, etc. There's lots that goes into that, but it's that you want to also set that strong container. Okay, a couple of other resistance archetypes that I'll mention. Some of these already got mentioned. I know Linda mentioned the know-it-all, right? Like, that's not right. You don't know what you're talking about. Let me tell you, right? The know-it-all, a variation of the know-it-all can show up in groups. I call it the teacher. You're in a group and there's somebody in the group who is like, they don't even realizing it, resisting either feeling their own feelings or doing their own deeper work or looking at what might not be working for them or whatever, that they show up as the teacher in the group. They always like they'll try to talk over the teacher or, add a hundred. And of course, as practitioners, we want our circles to add their wisdom and all of that, but it's that like incessant where they're distracting from themselves. And the teacher can sometimes hijack a whole group. Um, the spiritual one is one as well. Like, I'm all love and light, so I'm not going to take those kinds of actions, right? It's like, that's too, or I'm not going to look at my anger because that's beneath me. Like, that's not spiritual enough. The jokester is another resistance archetype, right? Always making jokes, distracting from the work at hand. So there are more, but these are some of the common ones. So let me ask you a couple questions about this. When you think about what's going on in your business right now, which resistance archetype is showing up the most for you? And feel free to make up your own too, if it's one that I haven't mentioned. Yeah, Ray is saying that for some of her clients, it's the opposite of neediness. It's like the overly independent one. Good, I'm glad you're seeing that, Ray. Okay, so when you think about your business right now, which one is showing up the most? Amy's saying all of them. Elisa's got some needy and confused, confused and victim, flake, yeah. All right, next question. How does, when you're in the energy of the resistance archetype, how does it feel? Because remember, this is energetic. So, how does it feel? Yeah, tight versus open and expansive, Simona. Feels like anxiety. Yeah, yucky. Yeah, yeah. Heavy. Yeah. Helpless. Rigid. Yeah. All right, next question. Look a little bit deeper into your pattern of resistance. So the question is, what is the pattern? And let me explain what I mean by that. Is it that you get really excited about something and you're all about it, and then maybe the resistance archetype shows up, and then what happens next? So what's your pattern with this? That might give you some more information. Withdrawal, resignation, yeah. Start strong, lose momentum or interest. Ah, the confusion, yeah. Get busy with other things. Excited and then fear of failure, yeah, give up. I do everything else, need other, yeah. Okay, good. Let's keep on going. This question might yield something will yield something for a lot of you. It may not yield something for all of you. What's the origin story of this resistance archetype for you? So, in other words, where did it come from? Where did you learn it? What's the origin story? Where did it come from? Where did you learn it? Yeah, first answer, totally my mother. Trauma, yeah. Modeling from your mother, yeah. A lot of times, your dad, yeah, in business, toxic relationships. Yeah. Not being protected. Yeah. Right. And like we said earlier, the resistance is there to protect you. It is a mask that you put on to protect you. Now, sometimes we put it on in situations where we may not need it, right? Because of old patterning. All right, here's a bonus question. When you think about what's going on maybe with a client or even someone in your life, a family member or a friend, well, okay, there's a series of questions. So the first one is when you think about what's going on with a client or a family member or of a friend, what is one resistance archetype? One that like really sticks in your mind. What's one resistance archetype for that person? And then here's the bonus question. How is your how does your resistance archetype dance with their resistance archetype? So let me tell you what I mean by that. So the question is, how does your resistance archetype dance with their resistance archetype? So for example, when I go into my victim, my husband immediately starts judging me. My victim triggers his judge, right? We want to be aware of this, particularly in our client work. If our client shows up as the confused one, is that triggering our judge or our victim or our confused one, etc., etc., right? So take a moment and think about that. How does your resistance archetype maybe get triggered when a client or a family member or a friend presents with their resistance archetype? And this is back to energetics. As practitioners, so many ways we want to take care of our own energetics. Yeah. The last question, Carlita, is how does your resistance archetype get triggered by other people's resistance archetypes? So, for example, do you go into the judge when you encounter somebody else's victim? Okay, let's pause here for a moment. I'd love to hear a voice other than my own. It's great to see all of your shares in the chat. Excuse me. I'd love to hear someone's voice. What are you seeing? What's coming through? Jackie.
Hi, I was going to raise my hand the last time, but oh well, I wasn't brave enough, I guess. I don't know. I think I just process when I talk out loud, so this was really good, but it was really powerful. I've learned about archetypes for a long time, but I think this conversation has just really helped to ground it and to land it a lot more in terms of the energetics, right? Because I think I was just cognitively and cerebrally understanding archetypes for a long time. And this has just really brought it into a whole other level of like, oh, I see that as an energetic pattern, right? And like in myself and recognize it in myself as well as in other people. And this conversation's given me a lot of insights in a current dance that I'm in with some people that I'm in relationship with and how I'm contributing. And it goes back to that, like the basics of my energetics and what I'm showing up as, because I like the blind stuff, right? It's like when you get triggered, it does hijack you. And I've been hijacked. So this has brought a lot of really good clarity into probably some action steps that need to be taken to balance the energy back out.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm so glad. It's sometimes not fun. I always say this in almost every class I teach. It's not fun to look at these things sometimes and to have these awarenesses come up, but the discomfort is so worth it, right? And I hear like you're already leaning into okay, next steps and things to do. I'm so glad to hear it. Thank you. Thanks for being our first brave one to share voice to voice. Amy.
Could really relate to what Mindy said in the chat.
Oh, we just lost your voice.
Sorry.
Oh, there you go.
I think I touched it by accident. I can really relate to what Mindy said in the chat about when I hear the victim archetype, instantly my first response is that I'm suddenly responsible to fix it.
Yes.
And that becomes very overwhelming or discouraging or frustrating because the client doesn't accept my fix.
Yes, yes, 100%. I'm so glad you can see that, right? Like just that, even that piece of self-awareness. And we're going to get to, we haven't even gotten into like the experiential tools yet of how to work with this. But you can work, for example, Amy, with that over-responsible one, so that it doesn't like get triggered without your control or being able to harness it in those situations. Good. I'm so glad you're seeing that. Maria.
Echoing really what Amy just said, I feel already that I will be better able to notice when I'm getting sucked in
Yes.
to the weeds of what's happening, because my resistance is dancing with theirs, and then I'm sucked into something which isn't actually the work that I'm there to do. That's not what I'm there for. So I can see this will be really, really useful. And I'm interested in finding out about the other program that you've mentioned a couple of times. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I love like what you're saying, like now that you have all of this awareness, you know that you'll be able to show up differently and call yourself out. By the way, we all just did for ourselves steps 1, 2, and 3 of the process, right? We created awareness that there is resistance, we normalized, and then we started to unpack our resistance archetypes. Just that alone, without even getting to the next steps that go even deeper, it can do so much, right? For us and for our clients. Good. So, really, this step 3, in this step 3, we want to support our clients to create awareness about what their resistance archetype is. And we don't have to use the word archetype necessarily, although if it resonates for our clients, we can. We want to support them to create awareness about what the resistance archetype is, how it shows up, how it impacts them, where it comes from, what the patterning around it is, just like we all did together here. So to do this, you can absolutely use the questions that I shared, and those are good questions to use. But again, I want to remind you always coach the what based on the who. And so this is why you want to have your breakthrough questioning skills really honed, so that you can really craft the right questions to create these awarenesses around the resistance archetypes for your clients. Don't just always use the like the template questions, because each person is a human being and they're different on different days. All right, I think this is a good place for us to take a 5-minute break. And then we'll come back and we're going to be going much, much deeper. So let's come back at 12:35 Eastern. If you need to go to the bathroom, get something to drink, take care of yourself. And we're going to get into the experiential work after that. So I'll see you at 12:35 Eastern. And Maria, there isn't, we don't give a recording of this call to keep. We'll have it up as a replay for 48 hours if you want to go back and review, though. So
Great. Yeah, thank you.
you're welcome. All right, everybody, I'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay. So, just looking for see, Veronica had a question in the chat, and I just want to see if she's back from break when I answer it. There you are. Okay, hopefully you're here, Veronica. Veronica shared something really important in the chat. She said, I find being in this step brings up even more resistance for me. I go into stuck. Now in the awareness, like I'm loving on my resistance and it's still there. What do I do now? Right? It's like, okay, so what if we are aware of the resistance and we're loving the resistance and we're normalizing the resistance and we know that there's nothing wrong with it, right? But we're still not moving forward, right? So there's a couple of things to that. First of all, there are still more steps in the process, so we're getting there. And hopefully, those steps will loosen things up even more. But that being said, this is important. This is for ourselves and for our clients. When we work in these ways on resistance, it does not mean that it's not then going to take some effort to take the actions to get the thing done. I wish I could tell you that this was like a magic pill, and then it's like, and then the pathway opens, and and then you just have to like easily walk through it. That's not what this is, but here is what this is. When we can work with our resistance in this way, when we can create awareness around it, when we can love it, when we can normalize it, when we can then do some of the rest of the practices that we're looking at, what then happens is that the resistance, now we're on equal footing with the resistance. It doesn't have to harness us. We have so much more agency at that point. Now, that doesn't mean that it isn't going to take effort to take the action, but it does mean that we have more agency over it. We're not stuck in that energy, in that energetic vortex that keeps us in the resistance, but not like knowing what to do or feeling like we have the wherewithal. We can harness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for normalizing the fact that I still feel like it's going to take some effort.
Totally. It is gonna, I wish I could tell you otherwise. It is gonna take effort, but you're gonna have the wherewithal to take the effort, and to find, I don't want to say willpower, I don't know what it is, but to find that energy inside of you to do it rather than being hijacked by the energy of the resistance archetype. I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you. Sandra's, okay, so questions, harnessing. So yeah, I'm using some shadow terminology. I won't get too deep into it for today, but when we are, when we've stepped into a shadow energy, and resistance archetypes are a type of shadow energy, because we're in that vortex, the energy is harnessing us. It has control over us. It's like with me, like, who's that woman, being so negative when she's talking to her husband, right? Me, right? But like, I can't stop myself. We're compelled, we're harnessed by that energy. Through this process that we're looking at today, we get to be more intentional with that energy and we get to harness that energy. Sandra's asking what agency is. When we have agency, it means that we have power over, we are empowered. So and if somebody help me here to explain agency, give me some words in the chat, but it means that we are empowered to make our own decisions, to take responsibility for ourselves, to take action. Yeah, personal power, Maria's saying, we're back in the driver's seat, feeling equipped, ownership, yeah, good. Capacity to make choices, stepping into the light of, yes, great. Okay. Helen's saying, as we go deeper, I find myself wanting to eat, another form of resistance. I hear that. Although I will also say, like, sometimes when you do big work, you can also get hungry. I know you probably know the difference in your body, Helen, but it's good to name it. Okay. All right, let's keep on going. Step 4, I'll put in the chat. Lean into the resistance archetype. Lean into the resistance archetype. Or we can even say, lean into the shadow of the resistance archetype. Okay, what does this mean? This is kind of counterintuitive. So let's talk about this. This is part of the harnessing, actually. What we want, sometimes, just to say again, steps 1 to 3 is enough to get your client moving and going and shaking, and then sometimes you're going to want to go deeper. If you want to go deeper, the next step is so as we've been talking about, when we're unaware of this, the energy harnesses us. And we may hate on it, we may be afraid of it, we may want to run from it, we might want to ignore it, we might want to reject it. Those are all things we do with shadows. What we want to do is next is counterintuitive to all that. We want to intentionally, consciously move towards the resistance. So instead of like running away, pretending it's not there, judging it, hating it, wishing it away, all the things, what we actually want to do next is lean into it, move towards it, be with it. We want to be with it in a significant way. When we can do that, that's when it has less power over us. It's kind of like, I don't remember all the details of the story anymore, but years ago, Panina, my older daughter, got really into Harry Potter. And she asked me to read the books with her. And of course, as a, mom, your kid asking you to read the books, you go along with it like immediately. But anyway, in Harry Potter, the villain's name is Voldemort. And nobody in the Harry Potter world wants to say Voldemort's name. It's like he whose name shall not be spoken, or, whatever it is. The hero, Harry Potter, he's the only one that's willing to say Voldemort's name. He's the only one that's willing to lean in, right? To be with it. That is why, one of the reasons why Harry is ultimately able to overcome. So when we lean in to the energy of the archetype, even though it might be a little bit uncomfortable at first, there is gold for us there. So I'll take you through this. We're going to go through this step kind of like in a group way. We'll talk later. This isn't necessarily what you would do with a one-on-one client, but this is the best way. I can demonstrate with a group. And then maybe if we have some time later, we'll see. I'll do some modeling of the one-on-one as well. So first things first, and I want to say I know that this can be a little uncomfortable. I want to invite you to just make a bullet, and some of you have already started doing this in a way. I want to invite you to just make a bullet list of the messages that the lowest level of your resistance archetype whispers in your ear or yells in your ear. So what I mean by that is you're not good enough. You'll never be able to. They're not helping, the coach, the whatever, right? Like they're not helping me enough. Right? So whatever your resistance archetype is, just write out some of the lower level messages that it gives you. We've already started leaning in. We're going to just lean in first in this way a little bit more, and then we're going to go deeper. And we're not judging, right? We're just being with it. Instead of unconsciously listening to it, like we usually do when we're caught in the resistance archetype, this is an opportunity to, in an intentional way, hear what it says to you. In an intentional way to hear what it says to you, to just see it, just be with it. And take one more moment with that. Okay, now we're gonna go a little deeper to really lean into your resistance archetype. We're gonna access, so it has lower level messages and it also has higher level messages, higher wisdom, if you will. If it's there, if it's an energy, if it's a part of you, it's got wisdom. And so we're gonna lean in by accessing some of its higher wisdom. And so we're going to do this by channeling the words of the archetype. We're going to do some channeled writing. So I'll walk you through this process. You can take a moment first. If it's comfortable to close your eyes, you can close your eyes just for a moment right now, or else you can keep your eyes open. And just take a moment and connect consciously, right? Intentionally. Or a better way of saying this is hold space for the resistance archetype. Almost as if you were holding a container for a client. Hold a container for the resistance archetype. Take a moment and energetically and consciously hold court with it. And ask it from its highest wisdom, what do you want me to know? From your highest wisdom, what do you want me to know? And then write from the voice of the archetype. I'll give you a few minutes for this. From your highest wisdom, what do you want me to know? Just keep on writing. Keep on going, see what else is there. Take another half minute. And then start to bring your writing to a close. And when you're done, read over what you wrote. See where the wisdom is. See what you learn. All right, in a moment, I want to hear some shares of what came through. But before that, I'm going to say a couple things. So, this step 4, this leaning in, we, just as a reminder, like, yes, hopefully some really nice wisdom came through in the writing, and that's wonderful, and that's great cognitive information, and that's very, very, very useful. And the reason why we do step 4 isn't just because of the higher wisdom. Actually, the higher wisdom is kind of just like a nice cherry on top. The reason why we do this again is it's for the actual experience of the leaning in, of the being with the energy finally in a conscious way, in a way where we're holding court for it. that is when, again, the energy doesn't completely dissipate. It's not meant to, but that's when it starts to have less power over us, when we can be with it in that way. And then whatever wisdom comes through is, like I said, it's kind of a nice cherry on top. Christina is asking a really good question. Well, before we even get to that question, I'll say one other thing is sometimes also in the being with the energy, what comes through the wisdom is a new energy. Maybe it's confidence, maybe it's peace, maybe it's trust, etc. That's the other purpose of this, is to be with that other energy as well, right? That new energy that comes through from the archetype. Christina is asking a question in the chat, and she says, is the resistance archetype the part of you that has the wisdom, or is it another part of you? I love that question. And so, Christina, I'm going to give you a short answer and a long answer. The short answer is I don't know, but the long answer is this. In IFS, which is internal family systems, and I'm not an IFS practitioner, but I know a little bit about it. In IFS, there is it is on the premise that we have lots of different parts of ourselves, and when we can kind of work with or befriend the parts that are a little harder or giving us trouble, or resistance, whatever, then we get to what's called this, I think they call it the soul, right? So that's another part of us. Like, that's when we get to that higher wisdom. That's the soul. So it is possible that the wisdom isn't coming from the actual resistance archetype. It is coming from another part of us, or the soul. That being said, what I have found repeatedly working this with clients and with myself, is that I almost feel like each part of us has a higher level wisdom and a lower level wisdom. And as we lean in and do this work, we get to that higher level wisdom, or the soul of that part of ourselves. So again, I don't know the answer, but it's a good question. Okay, all that being said, I'd love to hear some shares. So what is coming through? What are you seeing? What are you noticing? What feels important? Sandra.
Hello. Hello, Jana. Hey, everybody.
Good to see you.
Once you asked the question, I just did as suggested, close my eyes and just kind of listen. And my pen hit the pad, and this is what came up for me. I was hearing, you can do this, you will be successful, book signings and offers will come, loving yourself as you become aware and learn, you'll be in demand, people will seek you, the seeker, clients on their way, and forever earthly home being prepared now. All these things have been things I've had resistance about. So it was very interesting to me to hear what was channeling as I was holding it and asking it this question. It was just amazing. I've never had an experience like this ever.
I am
Thank
so
you.
happy. Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm so happy to hear it. I'm so happy all of that came through. And I can tell that you're already, it's not just words. I can tell, Sandra, that you're already feeling it. But would it be okay if we just stuck with one more moment to get to some of the deeper into the embodiment piece of it as well?
You bet.
Awesome. So when you read those words, how do you feel? What's the feeling?
I was feeling pretty physically tired earlier, and I'm not even feeling that right now. Feeling very encouraged, and yes, I can do all these things.
Beautiful.
I can do all these
So
things.
yes, you totally can. So I'm hearing that you're feeling encouraged and like you can do it. Is it okay to close your eyes?
Oh, sure.
Where in your body can you feel that, Sandra? This feeling of encouragement. You can do it. You know that you can do it.
Straight from the heart.
Beautiful. And so just be with that feeling in your heart of the knowing that you've got this, that you can do this. Feel that encouragement. Yeah, I see it coming up to your face too. Yeah, just really feel that. Really be with that. That is the place to tap into when you go to take actions or when resistance comes up. Can you feel that?
Yes, I do, and I will. I will
Beautiful.
certainly tap into this.
Yeah, and you can always come back to more writing from that place too. It will help. Beautiful.
Thank
Really
you.
nicely
Thanks,
done.
Joanna.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Helen.
Yes, thank you. What my higher wisdom said to me was, you've been divinely matched for your own transformation. And what I attract is what I need to transform. Life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. And also having a sense of humanity.
I love that. I love that. Where in your body are you feeling this? Life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me.
I'd have to tap into that again, but
Yeah, take a moment. We have time.
oh,
You can
okay.
close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. Where do you feel that? Life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me.
I'm gonna say in my heart, because it's that
Mm,
connection of love,
yeah,
of openness. Yeah,
yeah,
my heart for sure.
yeah. So that's a place to keep on coming back to, right? And when you feel stuck, maybe even like when you get stressed out and you feel like you want to eat or whatever the things are, right? Come back to that and then see what wants to happen next.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
beautiful. Yeah, you're welcome. Really nicely done. Linda.
Well, I want to thank you, Joanna, for showing up despite the cold and everything else that you've got going on today. So thank you for that. So the message I received was, you are a sacred vessel for bringing and sharing your wisdom to help others live a life on purpose. You help them understand that knowledge is not the same as knowing. You help them connect with and trust their own inner knowing.
Mm, how does it feel when you read that out loud?
Ah, very expansive.
Yes. What would be different in your business and in your marketing if you moved from that energy and from that wisdom?
Yeah, it would be, I mean, it's interesting because angelic is the word that comes to mind, and I believe in angels and all of that, but I don't know that I see myself as an angel. So yes, owning that more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I go a little deeper with you?
Sure.
What's what's the fear of owning it? What are you scared of?
Well, and so of course I also got a lower level message, which was,
Mhm.
being a perpetual student prevents you from fully feeling and keeps you in the place of overthinking.
Mm,
So, yeah, I that being fully in the moment all the time is a challenge for me.
yeah. Yeah. It feels like the practicing of the this energy that you're able to tap because you got there quick. I didn't give you many minutes for the writing, right?
Right.
So it's right there for you,
Yeah.
Linda, right? So
Yeah.
it feels like the continuing to lean into that and the
Mm,
practicing of that, right? That's the place. And I know you've heard me say before, there's a difference between a breakthrough and a transformation, right? So the breakthrough is that okay, now we're feeling this, right? The transformation is okay, now let's continue to practice it and practice it so that we go there more automatically and more automatically.
Thank you.
Yeah, really nicely done. I also feel like you might have some marketing copy in that right
Yeah,
now, too.
there's that too.
Beautiful. Thank you. Who else? We have time for another share or two. What else is coming through? Christina.
I wrote in the chat that I actually like asking the resistance about it, because it then puts it in a role of teacher instead of something that's like something you want to avoid always, which is beautiful. So what my resistance wants me to know that, should I preface what my resistance was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let us know. Yeah.
My resistance, so I just started my first long course with people, and I have people in it, and it's beautiful, and I feel very satisfied with the like launching process. And now that I'm in the space, I'm getting all these fears of like giving a good enough experience. And so my resistance wants me to know that it does require effort to be in integrity and to create quality and healing containers, to not bypass or float by with your privilege. It is also signals to deepen into self-trust and to release ego that wants to be seen as good, and to practice getting in those reps for embodied wisdom. So to slow down and embody and actually be what I'm teaching.
Yeah, it feels like it's giving you some incredible instruction on how to move forward. And tell me if I'm getting this right. As I was hearing it and also hearing as you were sharing it, it didn't feel like, and you need to do this and you need to do that. It felt to me this energy of, and you're right there, and this is so possible,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what's next.
Yeah.
Like getting
Instead of
that-
more doing, slow down and like
Yes.
remember what you already have.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Really nicely done. Thank you. Jackie.
Hi. This is a really powerful process, but it's my resistance, my higher messages from my resistance were telling me that it was interesting. So at the beginning, it really did actually just validate, like, you really do feel this fear and like feeling alone, and kind of validated that. But then it moved into, and this is why, it's because you truly have never done these things before, and that's normal. So it actually normalized it for me in some ways. It says, I do have the answers inside. Like, it helps me to actually come out of a space of not judging myself for going into those negative spaces, to not making a story out of it. Message of, you can do this, you are wise and fully capable. And then I just keep coming back to this last message, but it told me that this is a natural part of the growth cycle, the growth pattern, that it's normal and natural to feel these ways. And that was just really powerful, because and as you asked other people questions, I'm like, oh yeah, where am I feeling that in my body?
Yeah.
I'm realizing that it's in my heart, but as my body recognizes that message of, this is normal, this is part of the growth cycle, to not make these things wrong. Sometimes it is a little scary and it's uncertain, and I don't know all the answers all the time, but that it's normal. It feels really expansive, like almost like my shoulders just kind of pop back, and my chest comes up and out, and like it's almost like my body language wants to move forward, like in action mode, like, okay, if this is normal, natural, like let's go, what's the next action step? So
I love that. I love that. So well done. And it almost, tell me if I'm getting this right, but in that expansiveness, I feel like I'm also hearing a trust.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Beautiful.
absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Alta Gracia, do you want to share voice to voice? Oh, you're in the office. Okay. So, it sounds like a lot came through, and it sounds like there's this wisdom and also maybe a combination of the lower and the higher together, which is also wisdom, which is also very, very normal as we start this process. If it feels right for you, I would continue when you can to channel with this part of yourself, and specifically to start with, I'm a powerful being, and connect in with that. I am a powerful being, and then see what wants to come through from there. And then, of course, at any point, Alta Gracia, if we can voice to voice and coach, even if not today, we can go deeper as well. But that's where I would go next. And actually, what we're about to do next might help with that as well. So hang on, we've got more steps. Okay, great. So, as I said earlier, for our purposes today, we did this step, excuse me, through writing. And I did this so that you really can get, as a practitioner and for yourself, just really get a sense of this idea of connecting in and leaning in with the archetype, with the energy of the archetype, with the voice of the archetype, starting to make friends with it, right? Just starting that befriending process with it. If you're in session with a client, you move to this step, you're probably not going to want to do it through, you could do it through writing, but there's an even more powerful way to do this through a somatic experience with the archetype and dialoguing with the archetype. It's similar to those of you that have been through Sacred Depths, to the Befriend Your Fear process that we learn. And maybe we may or may not have time to look at that later today. We'll see. But if we do, I'll do a little demo of it. But if not, I just want you to know that that's there, right? You may not want to do the writing, but to actually lead your client either through a visualization or a dialogue, where you activate also the body level, to lean in to the archetype. Kelly's asking, would you explain the difference between the lower resistance voice and the higher resistance part? Yeah, 100%. So there are no archetypes or parts of ourselves that are there to sabotage us. There are parts of ourselves, or archetypes, that are there to protect us, but not to sabotage us, not to stand in the way of us getting what we really want. But what can sometimes happen is when we hate on that, and this is similar to how shadow works, when we hate on that part of ourselves, when we reject that part or those actions of that part of ourselves, when we decide that it's bad or it's wrong or it's unsavory, etc., etc., and we kind of like either disconnect from it or clamp it down, it like tries to get our attention in any way that it can. And so it comes out with the, the that what I would call the lower level messaging, the you're not good enough, nobody will ever understand you, you're never going to be able to, etc., etc., etc. When you can hold space and lean into and make friends and honor and respect that part of yourself, it actually has um, real wisdom inside of it for you. And so that's what I would call the higher wisdom. That's a good question. Okay. All right, let's keep on going. Now, again, I'm giving you many steps so that you have lots of different tools to choose from. Again, because I really believe always coach the what based on the who. We always want step 0, the energetics, and then steps 1 through 3. And then in the step 4, 5, and 6, you may not need to do all of them. You might pick 5, and step 5 is a variation of step 4 in a way. Or you might want to do all of them. You do want to do step 6. But anyway, just depending on how much time you have or how deep you need to go or how much you need to spend on it, you'll be able to see when a client is kind of starting to make the connections, feeling a new kind of energy, ready to go with it, or when they need to kind of hang out more. For our purposes as practitioners, I'm kind of like taking it slow and going through all the pieces. So step 5 is extra credit in a way, or it can be a stand-in for step 4. I'm putting it in the chat. Harness the gold of the archetype. So we've already started to do that, right? By getting to the higher wisdom of the archetype. That's part of the gold of the archetype, the higher wisdom. But if you want to go further, if it feels important for your client to go further, then this can be a step on its own. So let me ask you this. This is part of the step. I'll ask the question and then I'll explain. What is your resistance archetype's superpower? What is and I'll tell you what I mean by that, but I'll ask the question again. What is your resistance archetype superpower? So for example, and each one is different based on who you are, but perhaps if your resistance archetype is the judge, the superpower at the core of the judge is the power of discernment, right? The power to know what's right, what's wrong, what's optimal, what's not optimal. When you're stuck in the resistance archetype and not harnessing it, you get the lower level energy, but you don't get to like really get that gold of the superpower of that archetype. Now discernment isn't necessarily the superpower of the judge, right? You check for yourself, you see what it is for you. Or here's another example. If your major resistance archetype is the victim, maybe there's a superpower of drama in there, right? Like maybe when there's something where like when you facilitate, you can be really dramatic and tell stories and modulate energy, right? Because the victim can kind of do that. Or maybe there's empathy is the superpower there. Maybe if your resistance archetype is the teacher, maybe at the core of that, the superpower is knowing how to get others to contribute. I don't know, right? It could be so many different things, right? So consider that for you. Look at your resistance archetype. What's the superpower at the core of it that you're either using in your life but could be using more, harnessing more, or that you're not harnessing at all? So Linda's saying that her judge's superpower is the BS detector. Yes. Kim is saying her judge's discernment and knowing what's true. That, by the way, that's why a lot of practitioners have judge as one of their resistance archetypes, because oftentimes the superpower at the heart of it is really needed for the work that we do. Amy, exactly. Like maybe for the victim, there's empathy for others. Exactly. Kelly's, the superpower of her resistance archetype is clarity. Bonnie's judge keeps her authentic. Ray's asking about the superpower of the flake. Well, I don't know, Ray. I want you to consider for yourself, but think about if the flake was acting like really in its highest, could it be that it gives you the power of rest when you need to rest? One possibility.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you were there already.
Could it also be the flake does protect you at some point? I deal with a lot of flakes who, for example, are job hoppers. And the instant the job gets hard, they flake out and quit going.
Right. So that's when it's in its lowest level energy, right? It's that like protection from the fear of, oh my God, I have to go through discomfort. It has to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
But there might be a superpower in it. So for example, like Alta Gracia is saying in the chat, her flake knows when to walk away from a relationship that no longer serves her. Like that's a good time to flake out. So that could be the superpower, possibly inside of it, right? It's different for each of us. Swati's confused one's superpower is the ability to flow in many different situations. Creativity, empathy, knowing when to stop. Flake can be great for that. Yep. Freedom to say no. These are wonderful. Yeah, these are all wonderful. Yeah, Mindy's confused one helps her be analytic and take it all in, see different points of view, layers. Good. Okay, next question. How could you, excuse me, how can you more consciously harness the superpower of your archetype? How and where in your life could you harness that superpower more? Okay. So we'll go just a little bit deeper with this step. Again, this is all extra credit, but it can be really helpful. We're going to do a brief visualization and then some more writing. If you are someone who has trouble visualizing, you can still do this. You don't have to actually see anything. You can just allow yourself to feel the energy of it. So we're going to do like just a brief visualization and then we'll go into writing. So if it's comfortable for you, you can close your eyes. And yeah, and if you have blocks with visualization, it's okay. Just feel the energy of what I'm saying. This will be brief. So either see your resistance archetype in front of you or simply feel its presence if it's not possible to visualize it. So either see your resistance archetype in front of you or feel its presence, which is the most important piece here. Feel it with all of who it is. And whether you see it or not, it doesn't matter. Ask it to present to you in object form its superpower. Ask it to present to you in object form its superpower. If you are visualizing, you might see what this object is. If not, just sense it. And ask the archetype how you can best use this superpower. You may have already uncovered that information, but see if it has anything else to say. How can you best use this gift? What does it want you to know? And then ask the archetype to place this superpower, to place this gift directly into the part of your body that can absorb it the most. Directly into the part of your body that can absorb it the most. And take in the energy of this superpower. Take in the energy of this gift. Really feel it in your body, the energy of this superpower, of this gift. And take one. Notice how it feels in your body. And then when you're ready, take a minute and write from the voice of the gift and ask it what it wants you to know. What does the gift want you to know? And take a minute to journal with that. take another half minute. And then last piece on this, ask the object, the superpower, what is the very next doable action that it would like for you to take? What is the very next doable action that it would like for you to take? And then you can bring the writing to a close. And again, just take a moment and read it over, see what's there for you. And again, it's about the wisdom, but it's also just having been in that experience, connecting with that energy inside of yourself. So there's some great shares in the chat. Anyone want to share voice to voice what came through in this step? Maria.
When I visualized the judge, which was a Darth Vader type shape, and it offered me a perfect pink heart. And the place that I could absorb that the best was in my stomach. And when I was writing, it said that I can trust myself, that I have the wisdom that I need, that I am wise, and that what I want to say, and I know that what I want to say, and that it's safe for me to say it. Because for some people, what I say will be useful and will touch their hearts and unlock their wisdom.
Beautiful. How does it feel to be with that wisdom?
It feels really nice, actually, because the message that has come through the whole way along from the writing has been that I can trust myself.
Yes, beautiful.
So that's just really comforting. That feels really reassuring, really comforting. And I also feel that I can hold court with those different, like you asked, how could I use those pieces a few questions ago? And I'm like, oh, I can summon them.
Yeah,
I can hold court with them.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We're opening up the pathway to be able to summon them.
To be in communication. Yeah, so it feels really reassuring. Thank you.
Yes, you're so welcome. I'm so glad to hear it. Kim.
I also have the judge. And initially, what came through was the magnifier, like a magnifying glass thing about revealing new paths and doorways. But then when you said, where does that show up? It went into my heart and it said that the gift is a third door that reveals the unseen and the unknown waiting to be explored, and be open to that new pathway rather than the tried and true ways. But when I got to the action part, my head started pounding and I was like, so we're going to sit with this one a little bit more. and just see. But this is the work that I'm doing right now, in that leaning into the discernment and not letting it keep derailing me from those new things.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
100%. And
and
that
it
new
feels
action
hard.
doesn't, it is, like I said earlier, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make, but you're doing the work, which is
Yeah.
great. And then it's, the next step can be a baby step, right?
And
So
that's
that
what
way,
I'm leaning into, is when the physical, because I am dealing with chronic illness right now, and I watch for how these things are affecting my body, because it does amplify some of what I'm experiencing. And so I have to keep leaning into rest, which my judge goes, but look what you're not doing. And it's like, but I need this time for rest. And yeah, it's been a really, really long winter season, but it's only a small part of my life.
yeah.
And giving myself permission for that has been what this whole last year has been about. Like, so much untangling from conditioned ways of in that doing, and all the stuff that it ties us up in, perfectionism, people pleasing, all of that, to just keep pulling back from that. It's been hard, but it's also creating more ease.
Yes.
And it's so counterintuitive, and it's taken a lot to get my mind to like completely start to relax from that.
Yeah.
But where I am now versus where I was last year is like night and day.
I'm so
And I'm
glad.
thankful for it.
No, and I've
Worthy.
I've watched that happen, and
I know.
amazing. Yeah, so well done, Kim. So well
Yeah.
done.
Thank you for this, for even just all of this today. It's been great.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Veronica, I'm seeing your share in the chat. I'm so glad that you're just with your victim and really being with that beautiful message. Okay, so we bumped into the sixth step in this fifth one, which is strategize and take aligned actions. Whenever you do inner work, I shouldn't say whenever, but much of the time when you do inner work with a client, use that new opening, the new feeling, the new wisdom, the new way of being, the new awareness. Use it to support them to take their next outer action, to clarify and identify the action, and to move forward with that energy, right? So similar to what I was saying before, there's a difference between a breakthrough and a transformation. Hopefully this process will be filled with many breakthroughs for your client, but to get to the transformation, to get from the breakthrough to the transformation, is take the action and then maybe dip back into the energy, right? Come back to feeling the energy, dialogue, whatever you want to do, and then take the next action and do it that way. So we always want to strategize and take aligned action. So, in my first year of business, I actually found myself in deep, deep resistance. Except I didn't know that it was resistance, because just like resistance works, I blamed my inaction, my self-sabotage, my bottlenecking. I blamed all of it on things outside of me. I wasn't taking real action in my business. I wasn't doing outreach. I was blocking myself from being visible. I wasn't even following up with prospects. And if you can believe it, I was not just undercharging, I was grossly undercharging. And I'm talking like $15 a session undercharging. Plus, I was living in New York City and at that time, I was with clients in person. I'd take an hour-long subway ride and have an hour session and charge $15. I was so deep in my resistance that I was literally blaming everything outside of me for my lack of forward movement. Um, for me, my MO is the judge and the victim kind of combined. So my judge and my victim were so sure that I wasn't moving forward because they would, they would say things like, well, marketing is out of integrity and charging more. My judge is very much about, oh, but that's out of integrity. You can't do that, right? And it's a great discerner of what's in integrity or not, but not when I'm in my resistance. So it was telling me you can't charge this and that and the other thing. And those other people that are doing it, they are out of integrity. I mean, my judge was having a field day. I was being so righteous and not moving forward. And at the same time, my victim was also sure that I was the type of person and my family were the type of people who never got ahead, who never get what they really want. And so, of course, this whole business thing wasn't going to work for me. My judge, by the way, was also telling me I was a terrible entrepreneur and practitioner. So what did I expect? Of course, I wasn't going to grow my business. So on top of not moving forward in my business, I was beating myself up severely. I felt terrible about myself and ashamed and frustrated and angry at myself and at the world. It's like I had made a decision that there was some sort of club of successful entrepreneurs out there and that I would never be one of them. I would never fit in. I would never be able to have what they had. And all at the same time, I judged them for having what they had. Looking back now, that was many years ago. Looking back now, I wish that I had the tools to work with resistance and also the tools to work with fear and self-sabotage and myth of perfection, all of that back then. I was fresh out of coaching school and I thought that I had a complete toolbox, both for my clients and for myself, but that was actually far from the truth for me. And because of it, I wasted time moving forward in my business, and I also wasted time not getting deep enough with my clients and helping them as well as I could. And it was somewhere towards the end of my second year of business that I finally realized what was going on and that I was in fear and that I was in resistance. And I decided that I wanted all of that to change. And so I made the commitment to working through the blocks and really committed to learning how to help my clients work through theirs. I became a devoted student to understanding human behavior, to understanding shadow and resistance and fear and self-sabotage, to understanding what it really takes to co-create transformation with others. I did a lot of learning. I did a lot of experimenting with clients and optimizing techniques. And I did a ton of my own inner work so that I could show up fully in my business and hold powerful transformational space for my clients. And here's what happened when I did that. I started taking more action in my business. I allowed myself to be seen. I started holding deeper and stronger and more vulnerable containers for my clients. They started reaching their goals and also changing deeply from the inside. And then my business grew from that. Clients started raving about the work. They started re-signing. They started sending referrals. And it was amazing. And there are ups and downs in business and in personal life and how we relate to ourselves, but it's been really amazing since then. I'm at a place now where there are so many referrals and re-signs and my reputation has grown that sometimes I fill even full programs behind the scenes. So much of that is because of the ways that I have learned to overcome resistance and fear and self-sabotage. And so much of that is because of the ways that I show up for my clients and then the response from there. For me, since that second year of business, my secret has always been going deep for more transformation, both for myself and for my clients. And my students do the same. And this is exactly why I created Sacred Depths, which I've been talking about today. It's so practitioners can not only become the best of the best at what you do, but so that you can also move through your own blocks and your own obstacles, and so that you can be in full integrity with yourself and with your clients and hold that deep sacred space. So in a few minutes, I'll open up for Q&A on anything that you want to ask me, anything that we looked at today, and hear more shares. But before that, I'd like to spend just about 5 minutes sharing about Sacred Depths for those of you who might be interested in stepping into the next cohort. I don't want you to feel like you have to listen to me share about Sacred Depths if it's not for you. But if it's not aligned for you to listen, but you have questions for me, you can put me on mute for 5 minutes and come back, and we'll have Q&A time. So there are a number of pillars in the Sacred Depths certification, and I'll share just a few. So one pillar is that we master dozens of breakthrough skills, as well as core breakthrough skills, as well as advanced breakthrough transformational skills. So we take a deep dive into all of the core as well as the advanced techniques that you need in order to catalyze breakthroughs and incredible ahas with your clients. So for example, in Sacred Depths, you'll learn deep listening skills, but in advanced ways, so that you hear 3 layers beneath the surface, so that you masterfully detect what's not being said as well as what is being said, so that you stop wasting time and you move your clients towards results more quickly and with more integrity. You'll also, for example, learn creating awareness skills, breakthrough questioning skills, high-level strategizing skills, so that you don't ask questions that fall flat and you never beat around the bush when it comes to being with a client. You don't lead them down a misaligned path. You'll learn the Befriend Your Fear somatic technique. We'll go deeper into resistance archetype techniques, as well as so many other advanced techniques like rewiring negative thought patterns, overcoming the myth of perfection, so many more, so that you have all the tools you need to handle any client situation that comes your way. Another pillar is all about leveraging the 4 levels of learning and processing. And we do this throughout the program. So hopefully you've seen some of that today. The deep transformational work isn't just about the cognitive level. The cognitive level is important, but most practitioners stop there. In Sacred Depths, we learn techniques for activating the heart level, the soul level, and the body level. And then another one of my favorite pillars in Sacred Depths is what I call the soul work. So here we learn tools that go even deeper beyond coaching completely. We look at how to embrace support clients to embrace the mystery. We look at radical self-acceptance. We look at how to move with the flow of time. We look at journaling techniques, ritual techniques. So you get all of that. Plus, you get a full suite of business and marketing trainings as well, in case you need support jumpstarting your business or growing your business. Okay, so how does all of this actually work? Well, we have ample live training class time, so usually 3 times a month. And on those training calls, not only do you learn each of the transformation techniques in the curriculum, but you learn all of the human behavior behind it so that you're fully equipped. So that it's not just this notes on a piece of paper, but you actually know how to use it. We really leave no stone unturned. We get to the details of the details. On those training calls, you, like we do today, you also do your own inner work. And you go through the processes. You learn the techniques first yourself for your own benefit, and then you can work on them with clients. Those training calls include time for sharing, for asking questions, for getting all your needs met. But we don't stop there, because true mastery of transformation is also about integration of the material. So in order to support you to integrate the material, we have live practicums where in real time you get to practice or observe techniques that you learn. And then also, if you choose, we have optional practice partners. So you'll get a partner to practice with each week. And we also twice a month have optional integration sessions where you'll be with a small cohort and go deeper to really sift through the material and just really integrate it more deeply. Sacred Depths is really set up to be a game changer for you, for your work, for your client work, for yourself, for your business. And I can make such a bold statement with confidence because of the amazing results that graduates of the program experience and because of the over-the-top raves and reviews that they give Sacred Depths. Graduates tell me regularly that Sacred Depths is the best choice that they have ever made for their careers. So the next cohort is starting after the new year. And if you are feeling called or if you are feeling interested, I would be beyond honored to have you in the circle and be beyond honored to support you to see if it's right for you. There's an early bird that's available, pricing that's available right now. And also, just for those of you on the call today, I'm happy to offer an additional $400 off that early bird rate. So I'll pop the information page in the chat so that you can see it. If you want to register and you want the extra $400 off the early bird rate, it's sorry, not every bird. Early bird is the code. And if you think that you'd like to explore this more for yourself, if you have any questions, if you want to see if it's a good fit for you, then I highly recommend scheduling a call with either Caitlin or Inbal on my team. They've both been with me for many years. They're Sacred Depths practitioners themselves, and they'll spend a nice amount of time on the phone with you. They're not salesy. They will walk you through, really, it's kind of a magical process that helps you make a decision that is aligned for you. So if you'd like to schedule a call with them, you can do that as well, and I'll pop that in the chat right now too. Most importantly, I just want to thank you all for being here and for showing up and for being so committed to your work and to your clients and your clients to be and to your own evolution. It's a privilege to share this space with you. So we have some time left. I'd love to hear what you're taking away from our time together today. Well, even before that, let me ask you this. Based on everything that we've done together, what's a sacred commitment that you'd like to make to yourself? Maybe it's the action step, the strategy, right? Or something else. What is a sacred commitment that you would like to make to yourself? Thanks for all the Sacred Depths love in the chat. I love all my graduates. So what's a sacred commitment that you feel ready to make to yourself? And then also, what are you taking away from our time today? Hopefully so much, but like, what's the most important thing? What's the deep takeaway for you? And I'd love to hear shares, takeaways, or any cues that you have. Who'd like to share? Some in the chat. I'd love to hear voice to voice too. Oh, I love these in the chat. These are beautiful commitments. Yeah, the resistance shows up in more ways than you imagined. Swati. You there, Swati?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi. So my resistance archetype was the confused one, and what the wisdom that I got from it was that it was slowing me down to help me build a stronger container and to help me not take misaligned action. And a big part of that has been creativity. So I saw paint in the gift that it offered me, and that I had gone through so much transformation in the past few years. So I needed to slow down and allow the creativity to guide me through this unknown space. And also a lot of awareness about that I can work in many different situations. So, my background with the corporate world, and I'm still there, and I've made some incredible progress there in terms of aligning that with my soul work. So my work is really meant for a lot of people, and to not let that confusion mean that I don't know where I'm going.
I love that. That feels so, so important. And like now you have this new awareness and this new tool you can use to kind of move out of that confusion and lead with the creativity, which you have
Yes,
in so many ways
yes,
been
yeah.
doing.
And that's feeling really good. So,
I'm so glad. And it's so good to see your face. I haven't seen you in a while.
yes, same here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share before we wrap for today?
I'd love to say something really quick if you can hear me. It's very noisy in here. First off, I'd like to say thank you so much, Joanna. I really appreciate the bringing the spiritual piece in and then wrapping it around and still being able to talk about marketing and business within the same breath. I really, really appreciate the groundedness of that. And because I come from a work background, the idea of engaging with these archetypes, to have relationships, to reopen those doors and windows and have those conversations. That was really key and critical for me today. So thanks so much for that.
Oh yeah, you're so welcome. Yeah, and I'll just share, just for all of you to know personally, for me, this is one of the core pieces of my own personal soul work. What I've shared with you before, I've got a couple, but I am in regular and consistent dialogue with my archetypes. They help me get through everything. So it's a practice, and that is that difference between the breakthrough and I mean, you'll be able to take next action steps just through the breakthrough. Your clients will too. You can ride off the energy of that session, but you do want to come back to the work and come back to the work. All right. Well, again, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much just for all of who you are and all that you bring, and for your energy today. I hope that I know I will be connecting with some of you very soon. If there's anything that you need, let me know. I'm around, and I'm wishing you a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, Joanna.
You're welcome.